Kia ora, Ray Chung. Thank you for being here with us and taking the time out of your day. I'd like to start by asking you, what are you actually going to do if you become mayor? Not what you're going to can or bag or throw out, but what positive, forward-looking change and action you're hoping to do if you become mayor.
Yep, sure. I run 3 constituent meetings a month, and I always listen to what people have to say. I always listen to what are the biggest issues in the city, and how would they actually like me to help them. And so one of the things that always comes up is the unaffordable of the city, and so they say that the cost of actually living here is just so high now. We love the city. A lot of people have been born and bred in Wellington, never moved out of here, but they're finding it very difficult to actually afford to live here. And so what I want to do is I want to actually return Wellington to what it used to be like. I was born here, and I was born in the city, and so I've always been in a city person. And so I remember that Wellington always had something for everybody. I never heard anyone say that, I don't like this about Wellington, I'm thinking of moving. But now people are actually moving. People are moving out of here. Wellington is the only metropolitan area in the whole of the country whose population went down between the 2 last censuses. Yep. Now, if that isn't a wake-up call for the council, I don't know what is. So we've got to make Wellington better for as many people as possible, so that they do want to live here. They do want to.
Okay, so what are some things you can set in stone say that you'll do to make Wellington a better place?
To make it affordable, I think that the council are actually spending far, far too much money. They're borrowing far too much. The cost of actually maintaining those loans is just too excessive. And so I'm looking at cutting all those back so that we've actually got some money to do the things that are important to people. And I feel that the things that are important are community facilities. If we don't provide and if we don't maintain our community facilities, then really, I think, what are we here for? So I'll go back to core basics. I'll look at the things that only council does. No one else can do them. Those are fixing the roads, providing clean water, providing good stormwater drainage, and looking after people. So doing those things and giving people the basics. And so exactly what the council actually used to focus on. Okay. And so I'm going to go back there, and when I do that, I'm going to cut back some of these huge expenses that we've got. And so with that money, we can actually do more community facilities.
Okay, so community facilities would be a big thing, a big positive action you'd like to look into if you became mayor.
Yep.
Okay. Public transport fares, they're incredibly high. They're digging into students' bank accounts. Students are avoiding coming to uni because of them, or finding other modes of transport. How would you alleviate this issue, for students in particular?
Okay, I think that the zonings that we actually have for public transport are very restrictive. Now, I'm told that they're also very expensive for a lot of people. Now, I catch a bus into the council every day, and so for me, $4.40 is actually, not bad value for where that $4.40 will get me. It'll get me from Broadmeadows all the way out to Oriental Bay, and I'm not even sure if it'll take me even further than that. But it's not bad to me. But it's still around $10 a day. So if a student had to pay $10 a day, well, that's, if they're going to varsity every day, that's $50. So $50 is a significant amount.
Yes.
So how can we actually reduce that? So can we actually put in concession fares? Can we actually put in a subsidy? Now, as you know, the buses are run by the Greater Wellington Regional Council, and so it's up to them to actually set the fares and to decide what they actually want to charge. So we have very little say in what they do. We decide where the bus stops go, and we install the bus stops, but we don't have anything about running the buses.
Is there pressure you could exert on the Greater Wellington Council?
Yes, but will they listen to us? I don't know. But what we can do is we can help subsidise them. And so, for me, students are a huge, huge part of the Wellington population. And so we need to look after them. Otherwise, they'll just vote with their feet, and they'll go to Otago, they'll go to Canterbury, they'll go to different places. Yeah. And I do think, and as I said, Wellington is my town, and so I want them here. I want to see Wellington thrive. I want to see Wellington, sort of be the heyday that it used to be.
Okay, so concessions you'd look into.
Yep. So I know that there is a concession fare at the moment for students, and so, but is there any way we can actually improve on that? Like, could we actually round it off and make it a dollar each trip or something like that? And so with everything that we do, we can actually ask the Greater Wellington to subsidise it by that much, to issue their snapper cards and things by that much, but what we'd need to do is we'd need to subsidise it so that they actually have the extra money.
Okay.
Because I don't think that the Greater Wellington Regional Council actually spend money wisely either. And so...
Could you confirm that that's something, if you became mayor, you would take action on trying to do?
Yep, I would look at doing that. Now, one of my colleagues, Tony Randall, he keeps telling me about the zones that Wellington actually runs. That is the bus zones, and how much they actually charge, per zone. So when you get off in one place, if you're travelling within that zone, you pay this much, and if you're travelling out of the zone, then you pay that much. And he says that we're not actually doing that right. The Greater Wellington are not doing that right. We should actually have different zones. We should have more zones so that we can actually maintain cheaper fares when you're going from one zone to the next. So the zones at the moment, because there's not enough of them, they have one fare for, as I've mentioned, from Broadmeadows through to Oriental Bay. It's one zone. But should we actually do something better? Like, for example, if we have a lot of students, say living, in Ara Street or somewhere like that. So I think a lot of them would probably walk from there, but if you actually caught a bus from there, how many zones is that? So you look at where the bus goes and look at how many zones that actually covers. So if you can cover these things where a lot of people live and where they're going to into one zone, then of course you can reduce that zone fare.
Yeah, because I do find that catching the bus, sometimes it can seem like a really short ride, but I'm paying a hell of a lot of money for that fare.
Yes, because there are very few zones.
Okay.
And so you pay that same amount no matter how far you're actually travelling in the zone.
Okay.
So, and I think the cheapest zone is about $2.20. You'll be able to confirm that. That's on an off-peak fare. I don't know how much it is on a student fare. But does it go down as far as $1, or does it go below $1?
I can't recall myself ever tagging off a bus and seeing a 0 point something cents deduction. So I couldn't tell you, but in my experience, no.
Well, that's what I would like to have. I would like to... I think $1 is a nice round amount that I think it would be good for people to actually have access to.
Sweet. Okay, that answers that question. Yep. The job economy.
Yep.
Like you said earlier, people leaving Wellington, but students in particular, as soon as they graduate with their degree, they're not staying here.
Yep.
They're not entering the public or the private sector with their qualification.
Yep.
They're just up and leaving either to travel or to go back home where they don't have to pay exorbitant rent prices.
Yep.
How would you create more opportunities in this area for graduates to have a place in Wellington once they're done with university?
One of my basic platforms is actually to help the businesses in Wellington, and not because I'm a business owner in here, but because if you have the businesses in Wellington, then they attract the people, they attract the residents, they attract visitors, they attract people to the city, and in doing that, they employ a lot more people as well. And so they haven't been doing that for a long time. They haven't been growing for a long time. And you would have read about the entertainment areas that are actually closing down because they can't get enough people, the restaurants that are closing down, again, because they haven't got enough people coming to see them. And so I would like to understand exactly what it is that the City Council can actually do to help them. I think there are a lot of things that we're making it very, very hard for people to actually have businesses in Wellington. Now, if you saw the article in the newspaper today, I talked about this cafe owner in Ara Street that wants to open up a business, but he said that he's never ever struck it so difficult with Wellington City Council staff to actually try and get a license there.
Okay, but that's business owners. So you could start a business and employ graduates.
Yep.
But for one, I don't think graduates are going to have the money or the experience to immediately open a business in Wellington. And secondly, I'm talking about more professional, young professional jobs rather than working, say, for like a cafe or restaurant.
Yep. Now, if you look at, if you go back, say, 20, 30 years, you'll probably, well, you may not even be that old, so you might not remember that the head offices of all the big companies, all the insurance companies, all the petroleum companies, all the big industries were in Wellington. So why are they not in Wellington now? Now, the businesses that that have a lot of that require or that rely on a lot of residents coming in to do business with them, like a retail business, I can understand them moving up to a larger city where they've got more people sort of coming doing things. But the head offices aren't like that. So why have all the head offices actually moved out? And so because
Do you know why?
they say, I've talked to insurance companies and I've talked to the petroleum companies because, ironically, I actually meet with the petroleum companies fairly often because I want to understand what they're doing about electric cars and car charge and so forth. But I talked to them about I would actually like to see their head offices back in Wellington. So what was the reason for them leaving Wellington and going to Auckland? And what would we need to do to entice them back? And so the feedback that I'm getting from them is that everything is the economy, and so they look at what the cost of doing business in one place is. So what the cost of having their head office in a particular city costs. Like for example, BP used to have their head office here in Wellington. Now, what would we need to do to actually encourage them back into Wellington? And so first of all, they said that we would need a source of not only graduates but a source of employees, and so they've got to have the people here. They think that Wellington has no problem getting those because we have a lot of is reputed to be the highest paid sort of average wage in New Zealand, so they don't have any problem with actually getting employees here, or they don't think they will have. But a lot of law firms, they take on interns, they take on younger staff, they take on graduates. Engineering companies, they do the same thing. Becker, they all do the same thing. So they all want to do that. So we've got to actually get those companies that have left Wellington back into Wellington again. So we've got to offer them some sort of incentive.
What do you think that incentive might be then?
I think Wellington could actually make it easier for them to go through all the processes, all the things that we're making very difficult to all businesses, which are getting resource consents, getting building consents, making sure that if those people come back, those companies come back to Wellington, all the staff that are working for them, they'll also come back. So they also need an incentive. So they don't want to come back to Wellington and say, oh, look, we can't afford to live here because the houses are too dear, or some issues like that. So we've got to think about how do we actually look after all of those people.
Okay, so cutting red tape, that kind of thing.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Could you explain to me how you would improve all the services or issues we just mentioned without increasing rates for 3 whole years?
I will not do anything that is going to be a burden on the rates and that will increase rates, because that is my basic platform, and it's been my basic platform for every meeting I go to. That is what I look at. I look at the costs of everything and are we getting value for money out of that? And so, yes, we can do all of those things without costing the ratepayer any money.
How would you do that?
By looking for greater efficiencies. For example, one thing that we can actually control are the number of people in council. Now, why have we got over 2,000 people in council? Why have we had a 37% increase in staffing in the last 4 years? What do these people actually do? Now, I'm not saying that they're not doing a worthwhile job, but I don't understand what they do. So I need to look at that. I need to understand exactly what it is that they do. And we need to be focusing on the things that people expect the city to be doing, not the things that we think are nice to do and we should do.
What are things you think are nice to do and people think we should
I think a couple of things that are often mentioned is about our comm staff in council.
Okay.
Now, we have somewhere between, and it depends on who you ask, and it depends on how they actually work out what their major job is, but we have between 55 and 64 comm staff in council. Why have we got so many people, and what do they all do? I used to work for an American company, Trimble Navigation. It was based out of Christchurch. We had one comms person to look after the whole Asia-Pacific region, including Australia and New Zealand.
Okay, so I think I get what you're saying, that to pay for these services and fix these problems without increasing rates would be looking at inefficiencies. So you might be culling some staff from council.
I've been in jobs before when I've been with American companies, British companies, German companies, and so it's always a difficult situation when you need to cull staff. And so I feel that you're much better off if you can actually retrain people into the jobs that actually count. Now, if you look at what our basic core values are and what our basic core functions are, we have a 17% churn in council. And so 17% of people are turned over every year. So why don't we actually look at the people that are leaving, look at their functions. When they leave, we'll look at their functions, see what we can actually do to actually cover them more efficiently. And this is exactly what we did with Trimble Navigation.
So retraining
Yep.
more than culling,
Yep.
you'd
Yep.
say,
Yep.
okay, to
Yep.
make council more efficient.
Yes.
And then you're saying that will mean you don't have to increase rates.
Absolutely. If I look at even a portion of that 17%, that's a huge burden on our OPEX, on our wage bill.
Okay. All right. I'm sure council workers will be glad to know you won't be getting rid of them, just retraining them. You and other independent Together candidates are endorsed by Better Wellington.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They're a group whose founders have been proponents of anti-vax, anti-trans and pro-whaling movements. Do you support these ideas? And
No.
are you at risk of being lobbied by this group and its financial power?
No, I don't believe in the things that they supported before, that what they were doing. Now, when Better Wellington approached me about joining their group or doing the things that they thought should be done in the city as well, I looked at what my platforms were. Now, I had 3 basic platforms, and then they came out with 5. And so, but 3 of those 5 were actually very, very similar. And so they want our objectives for the city were the same. And
What
so
were those 3 that were
the first one
same?
is improving the city for businesses. Second one is making Wellington safe again. And so a huge percentage of our city, I think, is 68% of people feel unsafe to actually to come into the city. And during the night time, only 33% or 34% feel safe to actually walk in the CBD at night. So we shouldn't be having this. We should make Wellington a safe city, and whether this is perceived or actual, this is what we should do to actually make them feel safer. Because if people are scared to or unwilling to walk into town, then of course you haven't got a city anymore.
How would you fix the issue of unsafeness in the city?
I had in our oral presentations yesterday, someone came in with a video and showed us Newtown, and they showed us all of the things at Newtown. I couldn't believe that it was Newtown. It was absolutely filthy. There was rubbish everywhere. The streets hadn't been cleaned. There were feces behind the bus stop. Who is going to want to walk around in places like this? Now, this video was on Newtown, but I suspect that you're actually getting it in lots of other parts of Wellington as well. So the first thing you'd need to do is if you have a clean city, then it's going to be much more conducive to keeping it safe. Now, the other issue...
So having a clean city makes it safer.
So
not having rubbish flying around makes it safer.
Yep. It makes it safer because people aren't likely to hang around and again, maybe hang around the streets, drinking on the streets because they think it's okay to drink there on the streets, to leave their bottles behind, and so contribute to all the rubbish. So
having rubbish workers out cleaning it up is going to force people off the streets. It's
not going to force people off the street, but it's going to attract people because people don't want to walk in really messy places.
Right.
They don't. If you look at Courtney Place, for example, people complain that Courtney Place there's a lot of rubbish strewn around. The streets the footpaths aren't clean, so they don't want to walk there.
Okay.
And so, yes, that is the first thing that you do. Second thing you do is that you look at the people that are out there sleeping on the street and try and work out why they're working out, why they're living there, and what we can actually do to help them. Now, I do this almost every day. Every day of the week, when I come into town, I catch the bus in, and most days I actually instead of getting off in Lambton Quay, I'd go through to Willis Street or to Manor Street and get off the bus there, then I'd walk back and I'll talk to these people on the street, and I'll talk to them about what they're doing. Now, I've also had discussions with the Wellington City Mission and with DCM. Now, a lot of these people who are actually staying on the street are there because they want to be there. I actually don't find them there because they've got nowhere else to go. A lot of them actually live at the Wellington City Mission.
Because they hate the system, right?
Yes. Yep.
So how would you, if you're talking about making the streets cleaner and safer, and you bring up homelessness, how do you propose to alleviate that problem and get those people somewhere safer and warmer for them? If they're rejecting the system because they're choosing to live out there, how would you How would you help those people?
A lot of those people like it in the street. They might have breakfast back at where they're staying at the Wellington City Mission, and then they'll come out on the street. I've actually been in Tory Street, where I've come down Tory Street, and I saw this red hatchback pulled up, parks outside Bunnings. The chap who's driving goes to the back of his car, opens up the lid, and then takes out his blanket and his chili bin and takes out all his things that he wants.
So you think they've got housing that they're in?
Yes, I do.
All of them?
I think that most of them do. And the ones that don't, we will certainly offer them accommodation. If they choose, offer them. And I think that this is what we've done. And this is what Wellington City Mission also wants to do. Okay. Now, we give them a huge amount of money. We've just increased our budget from $9 million to $40 million to actually make Wellington safer.
So you think you're going... If you became mayor, you'd be offering the people that are actually homeless and sleeping rough accommodation?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to move on because we're running out of time.
Yep, sure.
And just going back to a previous point, you're not afraid of being lobbied by Better Wellington? Or you don't think you're going to be compromised? Your decision-making abilities will be compromised?
I'm very concerned about that newspaper article that I read last week about them, because I didn't have any knowledge that this is what they were doing before. I've actually known them for maybe 6 years or so, and but no one has ever mentioned this before, and they've never mentioned anything to me. And I'm actually very pro Wales, and so I don't like to see Wales
I see. Yeah, okay.
So,
good to know.
Yeah.
All right. And you don't endorse those previous ideas?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Cool. Are you concerned with Tory dropping out of the race, that your chances have slimmed of becoming mayor, with Andrew Little entering the fray?
I'm not sure that they've actually slimmed. I think that at the moment, with Andrew being in, he seems to be the media darling, and the media seems to be playing up that so many people think that he'll be a great mayor. But I don't agree with that, and I've never met him, so I don't really know what he stands for, and all I know is what I've actually read in the paper. And I'm looking forward to actually meeting him and debating some of these issues, but will he make a good mayor? Is he strong competition? I'm actually against, I think, a lot of things that I suspect he may stand for, but I don't know if he does or not. And so until I actually meet him and discuss it with him, then I'm not sure. But I think
you're not worried that he'll win? You think you're going to win?
I don't know. I think that he's starting from a strong point. He has a lot of support. He has support from both sides of the government. But I do think that his experience in central government are not the skills that he actually needs to run the city. And I think that Tory actually found that herself, that being in local government and being central government are very, very different things. And so the experience that you actually gain from central government, I'm not sure that they will actually help him.
All right. Do you think they're in cahoots and Tory's going to become deputy if Andrew wins?
That's what one of the rumours says.
I feel like I've heard you say it yourself.
Yes, I have said that, because I was told that right at the beginning, and I said that right at the beginning. I actually talked to Tory at the Anzac Day ceremonies, and we talked about Andrew coming in and sort of announcing running. And so I said, well, I actually think that he's more her competition than my competition, because you're both, sort of your values and your policies are going to be similar. So then she says, yes, she actually thinks that. But, and so she says, but she will be meeting him. She will be talking to him. And so that's all I know about. Then the next thing I knew was on the following Tuesday, when the announcement came out that she wasn't running. I guess I wasn't surprised by it. I was actually surprised by how quickly it happened, but I'm not surprised by the decision.
Do you have a good working relationship with her?
We don't really talk much. Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave that there.
Yeah.
Final question. Will you be a pro-student mayor, Ray Chung?
I'm going to be a pro-resident mayor, everyone mayor. And so, like what I said to you before, is that I think that we're here, we've got to work out what we're here for. We've got to work out what sort of mayor or what sort of councillor we want to be. And so I think that I'm definitely, as I mentioned, the different categories, I definitely feel that I'm a constituent councillor, and I will be a constituent mayor. Okay. So I will continually ask people what it is that they want, and then do what they want, rather than what I think they need.
And that includes student issues.
That includes student issues. And as I mentioned, students are a huge part of Wellington. And so everyone has to have their voices heard. And so we need to listen to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much
Thank
for giving the Salient your time, Ray Chung. All the best with the campaign.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Yeah.